Thought it was.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to enter the room. Hopefully you can see 4 smiling faces on your screen. If you can, just pop something in the chat. Tell us where you are this morning. What's the weather like with you on this fine Tuesday? We're Tuesday ahead today, aren't we? Tuesday morning. We have an action-packed hour for you this morning. So thank you for taking your time out of your very busy diaries to join us. Nobody's put anything in the chat yet. Always makes me very anxious and uneasy when I'm talking and I say, pop something in the chat, tell us where you are, and nobody does it. So I'm hoping for it. Thank you, Andy.
Turpin.
So loud and clear. So we're all good.
Is that
excellent.
The weather or how we can hear us?
I think weather probably. All good, and they're coming in from everywhere now. Thank you, everybody. It's reassuring to me to know that everything is working. Right, so I am sharing my screen. Hopefully everybody can see the slide now. So thank you again for joining us for our June app of the month. I'm delighted to be joined by James from GoProposal and a couple of very special guests for today's session. We are going to talk about KYC to RKYC. This will become very clear. The 4 of us ran this session at Accountex back in May to a full house in our app advisory theatre, and it was amazing to see the feedback that we got from people on this session in terms of people going away really kind of focused on getting deeper into what they know about their clients. So we thought we'd run this again for those people that didn't get to join it. If you did, we've got a slightly different spin on it, so you're not going to hear the same stuff again. But I am confident this is going to be really valuable for you this morning. So thanks for taking the time out. I'll do some quick introductions. Those that don't know me, I'm Will Farnell. I'm founder of Farnell Clark and co-founder of App Advisory Plus, and recently published my second book, The Human Firm, which hopefully everybody's had a copy of, picked it up at an event somewhere recently, and just a quick thanks again to James for the support from him and the team at Sage in terms of making that happen. James, I'm sure nobody needs to be introduced to you, but do you want to just do a quick introduction, who you are?
Yeah, I'm James Ashford. I'm the founder of GoProposal. Now the vice president of GoProposal, which is the worst title to have. You know, when it says like, choose what your job is. If you're on a website, choose your job, and you're trying to find vice president, it just doesn't exist anywhere. But that is my role now at Sage.
Excellent. Thank you, James. And we're delighted to be joined by Gavin and Claire this morning, who did a sterling job for us at Accountex. So Claire, do you want to give a quick introduction first in terms of who you are?
Yes, so I'm Claire Bartlett. I'm the owner and founder of Arden Bookkeeping, which is based in the Midlands, bookkeeping practice helping small businesses.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. And Gavin.
Hi, I'm Gavin from Beach Accountants. We're based up in the northeast near Newcastle.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed, Gavin. So that's who you've got talking to you this morning, a sterling panel who are going to share some really great insights with you over the course of the next kind of 55 minutes or so. In terms of things we're going to talk about, we've talked about welcomes and intros. We're going to talk about this idea of why KYC, know your client, is not enough. And we're going to think about what's the difference between KYC and RKYC. And this was a term that James and I kind of worked up as we were thinking around some stuff for the book, in terms of KYC isn't enough, because actually we've got to go deeper and we've got to really know our clients. And I look at this and look at what happens in the IFA world when they do KYC, and we'll share a bit about that. Why human is critical to get the most out of digital. So we've gone through this process, we've developed digital platforms, digital technology, but actually we've now got to go to the next step, and we've got to humanize what we do by enabling us to use the technology to free us to spend more time talking to our clients. How does technology help us to automate the mundane to let us focus on the real human impacts of what we do? That's really the crux of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk to Gavin and Claire about not only some specific examples of where they've gone beyond KYC, identified challenges with clients that's enabled them to build solutions that enable those clients to deliver things they really need to deliver, but also highlighting some of the barriers. What is it that stops firms going deeper? when we have the opportunity to do so. James is going to touch on the role of GoProposal and Oversuite, because this is, after all, our App of the Month webinar, and GoProposal is our App of the Month for June. And you might have seen in the marketing we did for the webinar today that we're going to set you a 30-day challenge. Now, this is optional, but I think it'll be really valuable. So we've set up a Facebook group to really give you the opportunity to think about some of the things we talk about in today's session, go away, take some action, and share the success of that action. So we'll talk about a bit more on that before we go. And we'd love questions. So if you can use the Q&A box as we go through the session today, any questions that pop up, chuck them in the Q&A box and I'll pull them out and attempt to answer them myself or pass them to the right person. Any general observations, keep in the chat box so we know that the Q&A is the questions that we need to get through for you all. So that is the plan. That is what we're going to do. We're going to get through all of that, if all goes well, by 11:30. So James, I'm sure it doesn't need an introduction, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about GoProposal? Where did it come from? What are you still striving to fix in the world?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, GoProposal we developed about 7 years ago now, which is price and proposal software to enable accounting businesses to price consistently, first and foremost, price consistently to sell their services more confidently, and ultimately to grow a more profitable accounting business. It was first kind of incubated in our accounting business in Manchester, in MAP, and then it kind of broke out, got to Leeds, and then over the next 5 years worked its way around the world. And you know, it's still a constantly growing, constantly evolving and pushing new initiatives. And it's grown from just being price and proposal software to now to become moving into the compliance area as well, with Oversuite, which is our own engagement letter product here in the UK, and with AML as well. So to really take over the full onboarding journey of the client.
Thank you, James. So in terms of the things we're going to talk about today, and to set the scene on this before James talks us through a few slides, the issue for me is I made a point a moment ago. I look at what IFAs, wealth managers do when they do KYC, and they ask deep questions, and they build their service offerings based on the answers to those questions. So if you've ever sat with an IFA, when they go through KYC, they will understand what your risk profiles are. They'll ask you things like, when do you want to pay your mortgage off? When do you want to retire? How much money do you want in retirement? Do you want to send your kids to private school? All of these questions that enable them to build a picture of your goals and aspirations, the things that you want to achieve in your life. And they go away and they build a solution, and they build a service offering and a product offering that is aimed at delivering those outcomes for you. So that's the way that IFAs view KYC. I get a little frustrated when I see accounting firms going through a process in terms of KYC, and when you talk about what's KYC, is like, oh, well, it's money laundering, and it's all of that stuff that we have to do to make sure that we keep the ACCA or the ICAW or the AAT, whoever your body is that oversees your AML compliance, and it becomes a tick box exercise. And for me, we're missing a golden opportunity. And that's really what this session today is about. We've got to do this stuff. When you take on a new client, every 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is that you've got to renew your AML, your KYC, we have to ask clients questions. And we have an opportunity to ask different types of questions that enable us to think about what it is we can do for those clients to make a difference to their lives and their outcomes. So that's kind of my scene set. And James and I talked about this, and we said, well, actually, it's not know your client, it's really know your client. And what are the things that we can do and should do to really know our clients? So James, do you want to pick up from here?
Yeah, sure. So to my mind, if someone's aiming just to fulfill your client obligations, you're aiming just to satisfy, like Will said, your compliance obligations. And the truth is, whenever we aim for anything, we tend to always kind of fall slightly short of our objectives anyway. And so it's actually a very, very low bar that we're aiming for. And a lot of firms, as you're going to see, fall short of that, and they don't even achieve that. When I think of know your client, it's you're just thinking about them as a client, as a business, where the moment you transition into RKYC, which is really knowing your client, what you're actually doing is you're moving beyond them as a client and you're moving into them as a person. And in our firm, I just talked about this on a previous webinar this morning, we had a core value, which was person first, client second. Yeah. And what that's about is you've got to understand them as a person before you can really help them as a client. And if you don't understand them as a person, you're never going to be able to fully give all the value that you possibly can. And so this is not just about you fulfilling your compliance obligations and what your regulatory body requires or the law requires, as it is with AML. It's about going so much deeper. I think the other thing as well, Will, we didn't talk about this before, but, you know, with the rise of chat GPT and, you know, what that actually means for people and AI, I think what that means is that if you're average, you will be replaced. I think the technology is so good, it can easily do average now. Yeah. So we have to excel. We have to become an elite firm. If you're serious about this space, if you're serious about having longevity in this space, you have to aim to become elite, because if you're average, the tech and the robots will be able to do average better and more consistently than you. If you're aiming just for KYC, you're average. If you're aiming for RKYC, that puts you in the elite bracket. Yeah.
And we shared, James, at the session at Accountex, your 7 degrees here, and I think we can kind of, this is a line that you talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So I'll sum this up quickly, but if we can share this document with people, Will, then people can dig into it and see what it actually means. So when we launched Oversuite, which is our own engagement letter product, this was our first step into compliance. And what we ended up doing was we found the people in the UK who are behind compliance in the accounting industry. They actually wrote the books on it. They wrote the original engagement letters for the governing bodies. Like, they are the people behind the system that we use, and we were very privileged to work with the top 2 in the country, and we continue to work with them moving forward. And they introduced this idea to me of progressive compliance. So if you just click the slide on, Will, you can just see that right at the bottom here, you have non-compliance, which is like people who don't care, and hopefully there's none of them on this call. But then if you're just aiming for KYC, i.e. as a tick box exercise, most firms are somewhere between level 2 and 3, which is either surface compliance or technical compliance. So surface compliance is, well, we've downloaded the engagement letters from our governing body. We did the AML check when we first onboarded that client. The fact that you've not done a risk assessment since, or because they're now, you know, their risk profile has changed, you've not kept that up to date, or the engagement letter is no longer up to date, doesn't really matter, because we have a tick box exercise being completed. And I actually think that surface compliance is the most vulnerable. Like, if you're non-compliant, at least you know you're not, right? If you're surface compliant, you can trick yourself into thinking that you are. And guys, you know, when we talk about this stuff, I never talk about, you know, fines or imprisonment or anything like that. It's not about that, because maybe you've got insurance and, you know, you've got protections in place and things. But I heard so many stories in this area. A really simple one was there was a man-wife business, and only the husband had signed the engagement letter, right? Not a problem while they were married, but then they got a divorce. And all of a sudden, the wife wanted to know why all these decisions had been made in the business without her permission, because she owned half the business, right? And so she tried to sue the firm. She went to the professional body, professional standards, etc. Went to all these different things, and the claim was rejected at every step. So you can think, well, who cares then? What does it matter? Why are you trying to put the fear of God into us? It took the accountancy firm owner over 200 hours of their time to resolve the situation because of a lack of a signature on an engagement letter. And it's the time that people overlook that will catch you out. And so when we think about where you are on this level of compliance, like I say, most people are around surface compliance, or they're fulfilling their technical compliance obligations. And then they start moving into fully managing the practice risk. Normally, you need risk managers at this place, or at this point, or a compliance team, which most small firms can't actually afford. But really, that's the level we get to. But even at that stage, at level 4, we're still thinking internally. We're still thinking about protection and making sure that we cover our own backsides effectively, Will. But where life gets more exciting is when we move above this line. And I never even knew this world existed until we kind of embarked with Oversweet and working with the people that we did, whereby you start to become mutually focused. So it's not just about protecting us, but it's about creating mutual benefits and mutual protection for you and for your client as well. And this is all about setting very clear expectations, making it very, very transparent in terms of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and the client understanding that as well. And then as you progress to level 7, this is demonstrating the highest levels of client care, where you are not just, you've not just got one person in the business who's completed a KYC for a client and has filed it away, but everybody in your business understands everything about that person, everything about that client. They're in constant conversation with them because they want to give them the most value they possibly can. And when you get to that point, ironically, life becomes more exciting, more rewarding, more valuable for you and for the client as well.
Yeah, and you just got to pick up some of those opportunity things in there that you've got in that box. And I know it's small, so if you can't read it, it's things like objectivity and professionalism is maintained, which is fine. But it's the stuff beyond that. It's mutual trust is a given. So you're building trust, you're building this relationship and this understanding with your clients. The client relationship is lengthened. That means client lifetime value increases. Competitive advantage is achieved. James talked about, like, if you're average, then you're under threat. And we should be looking at, where do we gain competitive advantage now? And the whole emphasis of me writing the most recent book is that for years in our firm, tech and digital was our competitive advantage. We did it before anybody else. We did it differently to everybody else. That doesn't work anymore. Digital doesn't cut it. It doesn't give us enough of a competitive advantage. That's where the human bit comes in, because the bit that can't be replicated is the way we engage with clients, the way we work with our teams. That's the bit that creates a new opportunity for firms over the next 5 to 10 years, as we see an increase in AI and everything else that's going to take more and more of that compliance activity. And finally, the firm's reputation grows through successful clients. It's like, clients are successful, they talk to their peers, we win more work from referral. And I've often said to people, if 70% of your new business isn't coming from referral, you need to take a look in the mirror, because you're not doing something that you should be if you're not generating 70% of new business through referral. So great scenarios there, James. And I think you're going to share an example that you shared in the book when you worked with the guys at MAP that involved family trips to Lapland and things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what Will was talking about earlier about doing the exercise with an IFA, if you've never done that, it's a hugely valuable exercise. When I first started working with my accountancy place, as it was called then, it was the first thing they got us to do. So we started to work with an IFA, both Becky and I, which is my wife on the right. And yes, I'm punching above my weight. I appreciate that. And it's my beautiful family there, not the guy in the middle. That's Santa Claus. We took the time to do that exercise to understand where we wanted to be in the future. You know, how much income did we want? Where do we want to sell the business for, etc. And there were times on that journey where Paul was saying to me, "What's the goal for this year?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to get to 1,000 clients. I want to get to £1 million in revenue." And he's like, "Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, how is it going to change your family's life? Like, how can we show up? How can we help the actions that you're going to take this year have a greater impact on your family? What is it that you want to do?" And it was to take my kids to and from school every day. It was to move closer to our children's school, into a nicer house, for Becky to leave work. It was to go to Lapland that first Christmas, etc. And so all of these goals were written in our monthly management account. And on the first page of our set of monthly management accounts every single month, the entire team was reminded of that. So when I spoke to Sam, the most junior bookkeeper, he'd be like, "Hey, James, has Becky handed a notice in yet? Have you got an offering on that house yet?" Like, everyone knows what you're trying to achieve. And all I will say, and I've said this many times before, the value that accountants and bookkeepers have brought to my life is immeasurable. Like, you guys have transformed my life. If you're in any doubt of the value that you can bring, you change people's lives, and potentially generationally as well, which is what we've been able to achieve, all because I invested fully in the finance function of my business, and because you fully knew me as a person and as a client.
And James, a couple of things that certainly at Accountex we kind of challenged the audience, and I don't need people to pop stuff in chat here, but just on that point. So James was sitting with his accountant, and James said, I want to get to 1 million revenue. I want to get to 1,000 clients, whatever the number was. How many of you would push back and challenge that? So again, don't need to answer it, but in terms of think about it now, if you were sitting with a client and they said, I want to get to 1,000 clients, or I want to get to £1 million revenue, how many of you would just say, okay, great, right, let's see what we need to do that? How many of you would challenge in the way that Paul did in that scenario with James and say, but what does that enable? What does that let you do? Why is it £1 million revenue? Why is it 1,000 clients? Because the natural instinct is, we've asked the client a question, the client said, this is what I want. And in many cases that may be great. Okay, so we can help you with that. We can do some cash flow forecasting. We can look at what you need to do, how many clients you need a month and everything else. But have we really got to the objective that James has got? And I always say that children are the best people at getting to root cause of problems. Because if you've got a young child and you ask them to do something and they say, why? And you go back with a response and they say, yeah, but why? But why? But why? But why? And if you ask why enough times, you get to the root cause. You get to the root objective. So we need to be prepared to challenge and say, but what does that mean? What does that enable you to do? Why do you want to do that? Is that fair, James? I think you then asked another question on that as well, I think, at Accountex, didn't you, in terms of the follow-up and how far people would have gone.
Yeah, it's so valuable. And again, if you don't do that, Will, if people don't do that, it's just a surface level that you're at. You're like, it's a tick box exercise. Oh, I know we should ask this question, so I've asked the question, they've given me an answer, and we move on. And if you don't have that level of challenge with your clients, you don't know them, you're not giving them the value they want, you fundamentally don't have a relationship with them. That's the key thing. And so you have to be the ones to ask those difficult, challenging conversations. But why would you want to do that? What does it mean? How is that going to change your life this year? Do you really want that? And you don't have to know the answers. Like you don't. I think sometimes firm owners, accountants, bookkeepers, they're afraid to ask these questions because outside of their natural skill set, and they're scared that the client's going to come back with something that they're not going to know the answer of. You don't need to know the answers.
Yeah.
You just need to ask the questions.
And in terms of this competitive advantage, because we've focused here on would people have challenged your first answer, but actually there's a step before that, because there's a large majority of firms wouldn't have asked a question in the first place. So that's the first step, is like, have you asked the question? So in that case, Paul had asked James, what do you want to achieve this year? So that in itself is probably 100% more than 60-70% of our profession are doing already.
Well, so, even prior to that, Will, he knew where we wanted to get to ultimately, how much we wanted to sell the business for, what our ideal income was, and what life would look like then, and what we were able to achieve, what our top 3 immediate goals were that we had to achieve. And then on an annual basis, where do you want to get to? And do you really want to get there? Is that making a difference in your life? Yeah. Like, if you're not asking those questions, guys, I promise you, you do not have the relationship you think you do with your clients, and you are not giving them the value they can.
Yeah,
that you can.
Perfect. And James, people might have heard you talk about Paul Gough.
I look younger there, don't I? It's been a tough few years.
Very much so.
Look at my grey hair. It's been a tough few years. Anyway, yeah. So my friend Paul Gough, it was his event I was meant to be at today, Will, that I've cancelled to be here with you guys.
I feel really bad now then.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So Paul Gough is a really good friend of mine. He's the largest guy in the picture because he's closest to the camera. And he runs a successful physio practice in the northeast of England, three practices, and then went to the States to train other physios in how to do what he does. And he came to talk to us at my accountancy place to explain that his accountant thinks he has a good relationship with him, and he's spending a good fee with him, and he thinks he's going to be there with him forever. He says, but his accountant doesn't know that his plan is to emigrate to America. His accountant has no idea that his goal is to build a property portfolio and to own properties in the northeast of England and to generate rental income. Like, and what he said there was, because my accountant doesn't know those things about me, because he's never asked me those questions, I do not have the relationship with him that he thinks I have. And I will drop him the moment that someone shows me that level of care and starts asking me those questions and really starts to understand who I am and where I'm going. And you know what will happen is, so let's say we're spending, I don't know, 500 quid a month with his current accountant. I can't remember, he told me recently what he's spending. It's thousands. Let's say £5,000 a month he's spending now on the finance function of his business. His accountant will be kicking himself saying, well, we could have done that. We could have offered you that. Yeah, you could have done, but you didn't ask the questions to unlock it. You didn't, it's your responsibility. If a client ever leaves you and goes to someone else and starts spending more money with them, that's 100% on you for not asking that question and unlocking it and unlocking that value. The talk he gave us was very, very candid. It's quite a shocking talk he gave us in that firm, but so valuable to give us really great insights into what he was thinking and what many business owners are thinking. Just click to the next slide, Will. I have recorded that, so you can go and watch it. If you just Google Paul Gough, Gough, and James Ashford, if you Google that, if you go into YouTube and type that in, you'll be able to pull up the, in fact, I'll post it in the webinar chat, Will, as we progress. Cool. But it's a really brutally insightful interview that we did with him.
Excellent.
6 years ago, look at that.
Thank you, James. And you talk about the gloss method.
Very briefly, and then I'll hand over to people far more expert and intelligent than myself. But the gloss method was a framework that we developed to kind of provide some structure to these type of conversations. So very loosely, it's, you know, what's the goals? Where your client's trying to get to? What are their personal goals first, and what are their business goals second? And it just gives some examples of questions to ask your clients there. What would a perfect week look like for you? What are some immediate wins that would help you to get closer towards achieving your personal goals? What would make a great year? What would make this a great year for you and your family? Brilliant question, right? So where are you trying to get to? Where are you now? What is your current location? And as accountants and bookkeepers, you are best placed to figure out where your clients are. Most business owners will think they're either better than they are, or they're worse than they are, but very few business owners know exactly where they are. The truth of numbers, as long as the numbers in the system are up to date and accurate, is unavoidable. Like, they will reveal the truth, as harsh as that needs to be, to your clients. So exactly where they are, so where they're trying to get to, where are they now, what are the obstacles in their way, and they typically in terms of time, money, people, knowledge, and technology. And then here's a great question to ask a client: how fast do you want to get there? And what that ultimately means really is, how much support, how much help do you want from us? Like, do you want to do the bookkeeping yourself? Do you want to handle some of this yourself? Or do you want us to take over the entire finance function of your business? Do you want to invest at the correct level so you can focus on your core business activities, not only you, but all of your team as well? And if you go through that questioning, you ultimately get to this solution. And there's only one solution to present to the client, which is what you would want if you were them, knowing what you know. That's the only solution to present to a client. So again, Will, we can share some things around the gloss method for people to dig into that in more depth.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. So we're going to bring Claire and Gavin into the conversation now to get some practitioner views. And there's a couple of things on this. So firstly, I've asked Gavin and Claire to share a couple of stories in terms of where they've been able to delve deeper into a client challenge, a client conversation, make an intervention and deliver a desirable outcome. So I'm going to get them to share those, but I'm also going to kind of probe them on what are the things that stop us doing this consistently. Because even though they're going to share some stories, it may be that they either now or in the past, they've had opportunities where they haven't asked these questions and have perhaps missed some of those opportunities that we've talked about. So Claire, I'm going to come to you first. Do you want to share a couple of stories? And really, it's about what did you do? What drove the conversation with the client? What was it you were able to deliver? What impact did it have on the client?
Okay, so the first story I'm going to share is about a client who'd been with us for a few years. She is a single mum, And when she originally joined the firm, obviously we had these kind of conversations, and the business at that point was purely just enough to bring the money in to support the household, but also so she was completely free to support her children through their education. But we got to a point where her children were growing up and they were starting to fly the nest. So I knew it was about time I had that conversation again, because her needs from the business would have changed from those initial conversations. So I started to, open up that level of communication, and ultimately she wanted freedom for herself. Now she was in a position in her life for the first time in a long time to be able to start thinking about herself and what she wanted. And she came up with this dream that she'd always had of owning a camper van and traveling the UK and just being as, free to go whenever she wanted, wherever she wanted. So we jumped on that and worked with her to make that a reality in regards to, okay, how was she going to afford to buy a camper van? What did we need to be earning in the business to achieve that? The best avenue for her to purchase the camper van. And then ultimately to build a better business model so she had that freedom to travel as much as she wanted, and she could still continue the business but on the road.
Yeah. And had you not have had that conversation, Claire, what wouldn't have changed? So in terms of the way you engaged with the client, the way that you kind of provided the services, so almost what would the impact have been had you not have had that conversation and understood the change in objectives for the client?
Well, I think we would have just continued as we always had, which was perfectly, viable. It was supporting her as she needed at that point, but we would never have got to the next level of her life. She would have continued to just have the same level of income, the same support that we'd always given her, but that wouldn't have been serving her at that point in her life what she really needed or desired.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Excellent. And I'll go to Gavin and I'll come back and you can share another one, Claire. So Gavin, what have you got? Same challenge.
And this was with a client who had consistent income, consistent profit, and somebody where you probably wouldn't recognize to challenge or do anything with. Sometimes it's you feel you don't have the opportunity with existing clients, more so than say a new client, but actually a bit about the client. So I had a client come in, I then challenged him and said, well, what would you like to do? What would you like to achieve? And what he then said was, well, actually, I'd like to do Base Camp Everest. And now, this client had been a client for some time, and I can tell you that I had never seen him do anything of a physical nature for all the time we'd been there. And therefore, I then sort of dug down deeper and sort of said, oh, that's a really great idea. It was something that my wife and I had planned a few years earlier, but my wife got pregnant and therefore we didn't go. And therefore I resonated with that and therefore dug in a bit deeper. And what he had said was actually, deep down, I'd like to do it not just for me, but also for charity. And therefore we sat down and worked through how many more products he needed to sell, how much more profit he needed to make over the year, and therefore had done a bit of a budget and plan with him. And therefore he turned around and went, you know what, that's great. I really feel confident and off. I'm going to go and raise some money for charity, which of course then put both of us into that relationship of making sure that that he achieved his goal to be able to afford to go, because we were then now doing it for a charity. Sure enough, we saved the money and over the time, and therefore he went and did the trek to Base Camp Everest, and therefore raised vital money for a charity that then gives children opportunities to experience things that they've never experienced before.
Excellent. And so, before we can share another story, just in terms of what the challenge is. So, I mean, if you're totally honest, I mean, do you do this consistently? Have you built a process to make sure this happens consistently now? And if you have, what's the process, because that'll be hugely valuable to people. If you haven't, what are things that stop not only you, but accountants, bookkeepers generally, in terms of being comfortable and confident to have these conversations, not only at the point that a client comes on board, but also consistently during their lifetime with you as a firm? Because it's really easy to say, right, we'll do it when we onboard them. But as you used in your story, Claire, that the objectives changed. So it's like we have to redo our AML based on risk every 2-5 years, whatever it is. So how often should we be revisiting this conversation? Should it just be a thread that is constantly there? Sorry, there's a whole load of questions there, but Claire, you go first.
Yeah, so I think ultimately you need to keep a certain level of communication open constantly with that client, because if I hadn't done that with that client, I wouldn't know that her children were now grown up and flying the nest. So it's the fact that I'd already built that relationship with her, and whenever we phoned up, you know, I would just ask, how are the kids, how's the house, how's the dog, they've got it, you know, and I know these things about her, so it's almost a friendship. And then so I could know at what point she needed to have that deeper conversation with me, that things had changed. But it's about prioritizing it, I think, because it is time consuming. So instead of doing that compliance work that I have for that deadline, it's choosing to put that to the side for the moment and spend the next half an hour phoning my clients and having these conversations and just keeping that relationship going. And I think for a lot of business owners, they would see that half an hour on the phone as sort of wasted time where they've got physical work that they need to do. But you have to look at the longevity of the financial situation that half an hour is going to bring you, because like you said earlier, it brings much more loyalty from the clients. It's a whole different level of relationship that you have with your clients. So they will stay with you for longer, but they also tell all of their friends and family about this incredible accountant or bookkeeper that they have, which my previous story, she's brought in, I've lost count of how many clients she's brought to me now because of being able to work with her to achieve her goals. So it is about prioritizing it and not just looking at the here and now, you know, the time that you're going to spend today on it, but how that's going to help you and them in the future. Yeah,
it's so much about the lifetime value, and we talked earlier about the bar is low. So this is a challenge that
it doesn't take much to
as a profession as a whole, the bar is low. And I often say the best thing about being an accountant and a bookkeeper is the worst thing about being an accountant and a bookkeeper, and it's called gross recurring fees, that our clients come back and pay us every year. And historically it's been a case of, well, if you don't mess up, the client will keep coming back and they'll keep paying, which means that bar for service is really, really low. So actually, we don't have to do a lot to be a bit better. But my challenge to everybody is that we don't want to just be a bit better. We want to be exceptional. We want to be world class in what we do from client experience perspectives. And you cannot underestimate the value of things that Claire talked about there in terms of knowing the children's names and things like that, and being able to have a conversation, because that shows that you really care. If you've taken the time to understand the dog's name, the children's name, where are they at school, what are they doing, and you can have that conversation. And look, you don't have to memorize this stuff. We've got systems that let you make a note that this client's daughter's called Sam and son's called Tom, whatever it is. And all you got to do is just check it before you pick up a phone and have a conversation, to be able to say, how's Sam doing? How did the exams go last week? Whatever it is, we know what's going on. That stuff is so powerful, because from the client's point of view, and put yourself in the shoes of the client. If you're talking to somebody and they're able to say, how's Sam? How was his exams last week? All of a sudden it's like, oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, really good. So it's really powerful.
No, I completely agree. But I think what's important also to think is that this isn't going to be an overnight change to practice. So start making those notes, because as my business has grown, when I started, there was just me. All of that information naturally was just in my head. So I did know my clients, and it was easy for me to keep a track of all of them. And then staff came, so I started telling them, but they knew it. But now we're at a size where it needs to be written down, and I need to be making notes every time any of us have a call with our clients. We keep that up to date. You know, we have a call log, what we've discussed, any new information we've learned about the client. But it's also the way that I started with it. You can't wake up one day and say, right, I'm going to have a conversation with all of my clients. I'm going to know all of their dreams and goals, and I'm going to go and change all of their lives. It's just not possible. So I started with my new clients. As I onboarded, I had those deeper conversations, and then, you know, maintain them. And then in the background, I was also gradually getting through all the existing clients and building those up, and also training the staff so they could do it as well, because you can't tackle everybody at once when you're starting from scratch. Once you're up and running with it, I think it's quite easy to maintain because you've got those notes and everyone's working to the same goal. But in the beginning, you do need to stagger it, and having the team on board to be able to do it alongside you, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with any kind of change that we want to drive in our firms. And when I've talked to people about technology, it's like, well, draw a line in sand. Every new client from today, this is the way you're going to work, and we'll gradually chip away at the legacy, because it's big, it's significant change, and it takes time and it takes effort. But the start point is making a conscious decision that this is what you're going to do, that this is where you want to be. And for me, this is that we want to make a decision that we want to live and breathe what a human firm is, if that's what we're talking about here. So let's make that decision that that's what we're committed to do. And we're going to talk about the 30-day challenge and things, which is kind of the start point of this in a while. But we have this opportunity to make a difference, to make a change. Let's commit to it, and then we start chipping away, as you've said.
Because I think it helps with confidence as well, taking it gradually. And, you know, because there is an element of sort of becoming an agony aunt to an extent for your clients. When you do ask these questions, you do open the floodgates, and you will suddenly be told everything and anything about their lives, their past and their future. And you know, so it's taking us from almost a corporate relationship to a much more personal relationship with the client. And I think that is a very unusual and new modern concept for some firms. So I think that it is a big step for them to take. But if you just start slowly and just getting to know their family and their children's names, and then, you know, what are you looking for this year, and then look at the bigger plan, I think taking it gradually helps you build your confidence and see that actually it's invaluable to be able to do this with your clients.
And Gavin, so talk to me about the barriers. What are the things that mean that we're not doing this? And again, I'm not saying we've cracked this. We're far from it. We've got the same challenges. We've got to go through them. We've got to identify our clients, and we've got to do this as well. So what's the barriers, Gavin? What stops firms doing this?
Well, you know, and I think it slightly goes to what James was saying about the Paul Gough is, you know, he said when we start asking questions, that's the time he's going to leave. Now, you know, don't be scared of that. But the point being is that that we can't just go to an existing client with a list of questions like we can with a new inquiry, and we've got to, as Claire said, chip away at it. But it has to be a team effort, and it has to be brought in subtly, because the challenge to get information from existing clients without the client going, why don't they know that already? That's the challenge that we found in that, you know, and like Claire, you know, the problem we have is that when we started out, we know all of that in our heads, but for us to write that down for the team would just take too long as well. So that we've got to do it in bite sizes, and therefore when the team find a little bit of information out, you can then go, oh yes, and that relates to this, or that relates to the other, and therefore you can then build the notes up, you know, as you're going along. As Claire says, it's empowering, it's new, and it's then really humanizing where we're going. But it's got to be a gradual step by step. But certainly, as you say, draw a line under the sand. Any new clients, make sure you've got a list of the questions that you want to achieve, and know about the client, and do that from day one, and everything else will filter in, and you'll build up a good portfolio.
Yeah, I think one for me, and certainly going back to the early days in my firm, that so much of the barriers for this kind of stuff is our own mindset, and our ability to make assumptions about what clients do and don't want. And I think this is a massive issue that we've got to get over, and we've got to put ourselves in the shoes of clients more often, because I'm sure there isn't anybody on this call that isn't keen to get support to help them achieve their goals. Part of the reason you might be joining this webinar is you want to hear what other people are doing that you can replicate in your firm to make your firm better for your clients, deliver more profitability for you. So if it's stuff that we want, why is it that we are too often comfortable in saying, oh, my client only wants me to do their accounts and their tax return. They don't want business help. They don't want help beyond the stuff that I think they're coming to me for. And that's a major issue that I think we have as a profession, that we are too quick to make assumptions about what our clients want and don't want, without actually often asking the question in terms of the things that we're talking about here. So we've got to get over that barrier and be prepared to say, there's a good chance that 80% of our clients want more from us. And it's to James' point, and you got to listen to James' story, and you listen to Paul's story, and many other clients who will happily tell a story of, I really wanted more help from my accountant, but they weren't forthcoming with that support. So let's flip the mindset and make the assumption that first, every client wants this until they tell us they don't. And that would be a really great place to be, wouldn't it? Because actually a client can say, no, I'm fine with the accounts and tax, and that's okay. But actually, let's start from the assumption that they want more than that, and that we're the best people to help them deliver that. So that's my take on the barriers. Claire, I'll come to you for another quick story if I can, and then we'll wrap up and talk about 30-day challenges and give James a chance just to touch on what's going on with Oversweet.
Of course. So just quickly on what we've just been discussing, a lot of the clients as well, though, won't be prepared for the questions. They've never had them before. So it can take them sometimes to relax and really open up about their goals. And that's why, yes, it's important to ask questions, but it's also just really important to just listen to the general conversations that you have. And this next story is exactly that. So he was a legacy client, and he was in his 50s, and we were just having one of our general meetings, and he just sent a flippant comment, you know, oh God, I'm just so tired of working all the time. I'd love to be able to retire, but oh, never mind, you know, pension's not for a few more years type thing. And a few years ago, I would have just sort of laughed along with him, and then we would have moved on and carried on the meeting, and that would have been that. But instead, I sort of jumped on it and was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. What would you do now if you could retire tomorrow? What would you do, and how would you spend your time? And that opened up such a new level of communication for me and him. And it turns out that he wanted to just be able to go and spend months and months abroad in the sun and just relaxing. And you know, he thought that he needed his pension money and a certain amount of money to be able to achieve that. So we worked to understand what value he needed to bring in each year to be able to afford to do that. And now we, as a firm, we do his bookkeeping for him, and we keep an eye on his income and his profits, and we tell him when he's hit this particular percentage, and he then goes traveling for the rest of however long he's got left in that financial year. He knows that he's got that money to back that lifestyle, and he'll come back at the next financial year and he'll be ready to start again. And I love that he's got that freedom, and he sends me photos of him, you know, cheersing the sunset on a beach, or, you know, so it's really lovely to have that open communication and be able to help him achieve that.
And that's a brilliant story to kind of close those stories on, because that's a life-changing intervention. You've got right there. And a challenge for you, Claire, is that on your website anywhere?
No.
That's the most compelling story you could tell in terms of how an understanding of what a client was trying to achieve and your ability to provide a level of service that has enabled him to take retirement early and live the life that he was desperate to lead. That's hugely powerful. And that's a challenge to anybody. If you've got these stories, if you've got these life-changing interventions, what people care about is what we can do for them. And telling these stories in your marketing and everything else is the thing that's going to set you apart and show the real human element of everything that you do. AI will never do what you've done for that client. Never, ever. And that's the power, and that's what we need to be focusing our efforts and energies on. So thank you both for sharing those stories, and that last one particularly does exactly what I hoped this session would do. James, any comments on that while I just pull some slides up and get ready to wrap up?
No, just fantastic. And if I put my client hat on, these are the type of firms I would want to be working with. And if my previous accountant had never spoken to me about these type of things before, and then you meet wonderful firms like Gavin and Claire's firms, and the whole conversation shifts. It becomes a very, very different thing. You're no longer competing on price. You're not fighting over the scraps with everybody else. You realize that you're in the care of a true professional. And it's very rare. We're talking the top 4% of the firms in the UK here. Claire and Gavin represent and Will's firm represent the top 4% of accounting businesses in the UK. That's actually what we're looking at here. And it's wonderful to be a part of that and to have you guys in our community, in our world. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, James. Do you want to just sort of the whole idea here is that we need to automate the mundane. We need to automate the stuff in AML, KYC that is a tick box exercise, so that we can use our time to kind of humanize the bit that really matters. So from a software point of view, and what you guys are doing with GoProposal and Oversuite, do you want to just give a minute or so just on what's happening and where you're at?
Yeah, sure. Really briefly, just on systemization in general, the reason why you need to systemize everything to the very best of your ability is you're trying to take away the thinking from the team. And then what that then makes people think is, well, if I take people's thinking away, surely then they're just becoming robots and they'll be replaced by robots. The absolute opposite is true. As human beings, we are creative people, but we need to be able to use our brain capacity for creativity and to have a conversation. So if you leave a client meeting thinking, I've got to send the proposal, I've got to get the price over, I've got to figure out what to charge them, I've got to get my AML done, and your head's occupied with all that stuff, you cannot do anything that's been talked about on this call. It's not possible. So you have to be able to free up all of your time, which is why we've done our very best to take away all of the pain out of the onboarding process. So you've got GoProposal with the pricing and the engagement letter side of things. Oversuite will take over the running of your engagement letters, and we'll keep them constantly up to date for you. And then more recently, we brought in the AML functionality with true KYC and risk assessments. And this month, biometrics has been brought in as well for ID checks, the highest level of ID checks available on the market. So we've now completed that process. And rather than it be a tick box exercise whereby, oh, I've done my AML, that's done. No, you haven't done it. It's maybe you don't necessarily need to do all of it, but you need to know when you need to do it, what parts you need to do, and also what frequency you need to do it by, because maybe it's annually, maybe it's every 2 years, or maybe it's when the risk profile of that client changes. So we've got all that data within the system to surface it for you, to help to manage this, to make sure that you are not just meeting your compliance, but you're delivering the very highest level of compliance as well.
Excellent. Thank you, James. So we were really keen that we've talked about some stuff here. You've heard some stories from Claire and Gavin, that we give you a mechanism by which to take some action from this webinar. So we've created a 30-day challenge. We've set up a Facebook group purely for this 30-day challenge. And our suggestion, and James, feel free to chip in on this, is pick a client. So it can be a new client, it can be an existing client, but pick a client and have a different conversation with that client. Ask some of the questions that James talked about in the gloss method here. Ask that question about, what would a good 12 months look like for you? What would happen if you had a great 12 months? look at what that conversation gives you the opportunity to do. Look at what you might be able to do differently in terms of the way that you engage with that client, and share what you learn within this Facebook group. So what we're going to do after the session, you'll get a recording emailed over to you. There will be a link to this Facebook group in there. You can jump in, give us any feedback on the webinar today, but actually tell us what you're going to do. Tell us, we'll give you an element of group accountability if you're serious about taking action on the back of this webinar. James.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the whole point of webinars like this for us, it's not about us educating you or trying to sell you something or giving you something of interest or entertaining you. It's about making a difference. You know, you'll have taken notes on this, but unless you're prepared to take action, nothing is going to be any different in your business. And all I can say to you is, when people get round to doing this, the feedback you get, that Will gets, that I get, is, why didn't I do it sooner? Like, everything starts to change when you start to change the conversation. Someone put here, is it Fozia, saying, yeah, but there's a fear of asking these additional questions when you're already stretched, because the last thing you want is more work and more pressure. It's better pressure. It's better work. So you can go and have a different conversation with clients. And when I've seen this happen, fees can increase with that client by up to 10 times. I don't even shout about that stuff because it sounds so unrealistic. I've seen it happen over and over again, but the workload doesn't increase by 10 times. With that one thing, it will boost your confidence and allow you to drop some clients if need be. So commit to the client that you're going to change and join the group. Don't join this if you're not prepared to do it. This is a group where Gavin's going to be there, Claire's going to be there, Will's going to be there, I'm going to be there, and we're going to guide you on this journey for the next 30 days to have that different conversation.
Yep. James, a question that I'm going to put to you, if that's okay. The question is, how do you keep the relationship professional yet friendly without becoming too pally-pally, so the client knows they're paying for this friendliness?
Yeah, I was always taught a good phrase was, be friendly, but not their friend. Because what you have to be is, we have to be able to have kind conversations, not nice conversations. That's the difference I see there. So when we think of pally-pally, we have to have a nice conversation. You don't have to have nice conversations with your clients. You have to have kind conversations. And that may be to be challenging, or to have that difficult conversation with them, or an honest conversation, or to point out their blind spots to them. And so the moment you get too close and you become too afraid of doing that is when the relationship will actually deteriorate. So we need to be friendly, but we need that professional distance to allow us to have kind conversations.
Claire, anything to add on that? Any observations from your side?
Yeah, I think you want to, I said earlier, it became sort of a friendship, and it does to a level, but you don't talk about, you know, really personal things. You have to keep that balance. And as James said, you have to be prepared to, you know, have the difficult conversations if they're required, but I love what James just said, in a kind way. And I think you need to always keep that balance there, and you're doing it for a benefit in a work environment for the client. And I think it's important to sort of make sure that they remember that, and it's not just about chatting about what they did at the weekend, or, you know, how the kids are getting on, but it's you're chatting about that for a purpose, to see how you can help them financially in their business achieve better things. So it's never losing that connection.
Perfect. And Gavin, any comments from you on that? Any examples?
Yeah, I agree completely with Claire, and because and James, because sometimes you do have to have a harsh conversation, and we had come across it where one of our clients had asked us to send any reminders to accounts at for his business, and then when we had realized he hadn't paid a certain tax, he goes, oh well, I never checked that email address. And you've got to sit down and go, well, you know, you've got to do it. You can't do one thing and then tell us one thing and then do the other. And whilst, you know, I'm quite friendly with them, I could sit down and kind of go, well, you still expected to be at some point in time. Why didn't you even then question it? And therefore you've got to get that balance right. And as you say, remember that clients aren't your friend, but you can be friendly.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Hope that answers that question. So in terms of wrapping up, always like to finish on a couple of key takeaways. So for me, use KYC discussions to capture your clients' goals and aspirations. It's like, this is that point. We've got to move deeper. We've got to go deeper. We have this great opportunity. The fact that we have to do KYC gives us the foundations to actually make it a really valuable exercise for both us and for our clients. And as James said, use the technology to automate the routine and the mundane, and focus your efforts on humanizing the stuff that's really, really valuable, the stuff that's really going to make a difference to you and your business and your clients and their business. So for me, sometimes we have more takeaways here, but I think that's the crux of everything we've talked about here. It's like, use the opportunity we've got, make sure that we use technology to do the stuff that is prime for automation, so that we can focus on the stuff that really matters. And GoProposal have very kindly, for anybody that isn't already a GoProposal user, offered an offer for anybody on the webinar today. You can get 50% off for 2 months. We will share the link in a follow-up email that comes out, along with the Facebook group for the 30-day challenge. We'd love to see you get involved in that. I'm only a minute over. So huge thank you to everybody for attending the session today. Thank you for the engagement. Thank you to James, Claire and Gavin for being part of the session. We really hope that it's triggered something in your thinking, and that you'll go away, you'll grab hold of the 30-day challenge and do something to make a difference. Take some action from today. James, any closing comments from you?
No, just take action. And the truth is, if you don't take any action within the next hour, so before, probably half an hour before you go to lunch, chance if you take any action starts to drop off massively, and then the value of this session becomes more and more useless, really. So if you're going to join the Facebook group and take us up on the challenge, do it before you break for lunch, before you start reading emails and things like that, because that'll help to build that momentum to take you forward. Excellent. And we've posted the Facebook group in the chat, so everybody should have got that and the GoProposal offer. So thank you again for taking an hour out of your diaries. Thank you to the three of you for joining. Really valuable input. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody. See you all soon. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.